Hey, I'm Josh, and this is Beyond the Numbers. It's a podcast where we talk about what real health should look like within our churches. We do that through real and raw conversations at times, but the only way to get healthy is to discuss what's wrong and then the ways to make it healthier. I'm joined today for a very special Voices from the Field with Matt. If you remember from last season, Matt was here when we talked about pain and how we can overcome that pain and how God uses that pain in amazing ways. We have him back today because during our little downtime in between that video, he shared just what a transition process was looking like for him and the amazing kind of plan that was put in place and foundation that was put in place for him to transition well into this new youth ministry role. And it kind of got my head going on, man, this is something awesome that I think that we need to talk about within this series. And so I want to welcome back Matt as we talk about the transition that he went through and just how it really shined Christ to all those that he's ministering to. So welcome back, Matt.
Hey, man, thanks. And I don't know if you remember from our last time, I said if I get invited on a podcast, I've made it in life. Now I'm a return guest, so I don't know what's next. Like going to the moon? Like I don't know. I've accomplished all my life goals, and
man, that's a huge thing. And then to come back as well, maybe like an Oscar or an Emmy next would be,
that's my wife says I'm dramatic, so who knows?
All right. So when we talked before, we were talking about the season of transition that you were in as you were stepping into a youth pastor role and what that transition looked like. And to me, it was one of the healthiest kind of transition plans that I've heard of. And I've been part of a lot of rough transitions. And so while the episode is talking about kind of the bad side of transitions and how we make them healthier, especially in this episode today, I wanted to talk about a bit about your transition, but then also kind of discuss what made it so healthy, the big outcomes that you saw, and how maybe this is a good plan for those looking to transition out or into ministry and how we make it such a healthy thing.
Sure.
So before we jump into the actual transition, would you just catch anyone up that maybe they've seen you before or maybe they haven't, just about yourself, about your life, ministry, family, a brief overview of who you are?
Yeah, for sure. So as of this recording, I'm about 2 weeks away from hitting my 1-year anniversary at the church.
Congratulations.
Thanks, man. It's been an awesome year. I am the student director of Colonial Church in Wichita Falls, Texas. And if you're new to like the ministry, like what is student director, next gen pastor, student pastor, youth pastor, they're all the same. In 5 years, we'll have a different title and everybody's going to be like, what's that mean? And we'll go back to I'm a youth pastor because that's what everybody knows. It's been a long year. It's been a year of growing. It's been a year of watching God move through our 6th and 12th graders. It's been a year of watching the devil try to move through our 6th and 12th graders. But we know at the end of the day that we have the more powerful one with Jesus, and we have kicked every week after our pregame huddle. You know, whether I pray or one of my leaders prays, I'll say, "All right, let's go kick the devil right in his teeth," and we have done that time and time and time again. And he's getting mad, but we're going to keep kicking him right in his teeth time and time and time again.
Hey man, that's awesome, man. All right, so kind of looking at this transition, you said you're approaching the 1-year mark, which, awesome. Congratulations. That's really amazing. When you knew that this transition was coming, what was happening behind the scenes between you and this previous youth pastor?
Yeah, for sure. So my predecessor, Nick, he got hired, and I want to say it was like 21, 22, somewhere around there. And when he got hired, before he even signed any paperwork, he said, May 2025 is my hard line in the sand. I've been accepted to a grant program, and I can't remember. It's either licensed clinical social worker or licensed professional counselor. I can't remember which one. But he was like, that's where God's leading me. I'm on a grant program where, the state is going to pay for my schooling. That's what I want to do. So he was like 2025. And then the elder board and the executive pastor was like, yeah, cool. Like that's 3 years away. And then 2024 came around and it was like, hey, Nick's leaving soon. And I shared very briefly in the last episode I did with you how it was God ordained steps. I'm also in the military. I was getting assigned to the same town this church was in, and I told my wife, I don't care what church we land at, 2 things had to happen. God has to lead us there, and we have to be able to be involved in students. I wasn't trying to be a youth pastor or student director or anything, but I I have to be involved. And then, long story short, I was interviewed a few times, and then they were like, yeah, we want you for the job. Do you accept? I was like, yeah. Okay, you and Nick figure it out and work through this transition. And so we were like, cool. What next? And so we actually sat down and we drew out a transition plan. And I think, in my opinion, and we might talk about this a little more in the episode, so I might be jumping the gun just a little bit.
That's fine.
But I think, in my opinion, where transitions go wrong is people just throw darts at the board and like, well, I hope I hit the bullseye. I might hit the one though, So we drew out a plan. How are we going to hit the bullseye with every throw? For the entire first 45-ish days of my tenure on staff, I didn't do anything executive that a youth pastor would do. I didn't make phone calls to parents. I didn't really spend like the one-on-one time with the students. I was there. I was in every small group. I rotated through every small group. I'm learning names. I'm learning parents, what schools these students are going to, middle school, high school, what sports are they in, or extracurriculars. I have one student who's like pretty talented trumpet player or trumpetist or whatever you call it. I have no musical ability, but I've gone to a couple of his concerts. I'm like, yeah, that dude's like really good trumpet player.
That's awesome.
So the first 45 days, I was just a fly on the wall. And in fact, for the first 30 days of my hire, we didn't tell anybody. Now, students aren't dumb, right? Those that have been in student ministry know they're very like, hey, we know Nick's leaving at the end of the semester. And then there's this guy following Nick everywhere with a notebook in his hand taking notes. Like, so they put 2 and 2 together pretty fast.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, we didn't tell anybody. It was just like, hey, learn. And then when we finally announced to the students, it was like, hey, Matt's going to take the baton. And I remember Nick using those words specifically. Matt's going to take the baton. It wasn't, oh, I'm leaving, I'm mad, here's a new guy, he sucks. It was, hey, everything that we've done, he's just going to keep running with it.
That's awesome.
So after that first 45 days, him and I kind of like tag teamed the preaching series. It was like every other week they saw, hey, there's Nick's style of preaching, there's Matt's style of preaching, there's Nick's style of preaching, there's Matt's style of preaching. And then in April, now his cutoff day was May. So in April, he was like, I'm hands off. Use me where you need me, but I'm gone in 40 days. So we're going to let you figure it out. And I did. And there were times where I leaned on him for his experience because I was the rookie, right? I called Tom Brady. I was like, hey, I need help. How do I throw a football, But it was that constant communication that we had and the plan that we set in place to, this isn't Matt versus Nick. This is Nick leaving. He's going to push Matt to keep going in the race. And it was an awesome, if every transition, and yes, I was involved, so I sound biased, but if every transition, not just in ministry, but in like CEOs and managers and everything, if they transition like this, the world would be a better place for sure.
Well, I've been part of a decent amount of transitions, and I will tell you that they are not always the prettiest thing. So I might be biased on that one. But this sounds like a completely different thing. And I love that you said two like key things. There was the communication. And then on top of that, there was just this idea that you guys actually planned it out. And like you said, so many people it's throwing darts at the dartboard. It's hoping that something sticks. But I mean, when in life do you just like, okay, I'm going to get into shape. I just hope I happen to fall into the gym.
Exactly.
I hope I start eating healthier. Like you got to make some plans. So that's really awesome. Now, there was that season of overlap between you guys. What did that look like for you guys in real life? I know you mentioned like the communication. Can you give us a little more in-depth look on what that looked like in real life for you guys?
Yeah, so my personality, and this might come from being a veteran of the military, right? I like to have plan A, B, C, usually upwards into like, we're in like F, G, H area, because I've learned through military service that plan A, that doesn't always work. And in fact, it very rarely works. So like when plan A, when you see it start failing, plan B's going, plan C's being put into place. And so that was kind of like my personality. And Nick's personality was like, yeah, well, what happens. And it's cool because it's perfect for students, because students, for those that are experienced in student ministry, you could have plan A through Z, and you're probably in plan AA by the end of the night, because it just does not go how you thought.
Jumping into the Greek alphabet.
Yeah, exactly, dude. It's crazy what happens on a Wednesday or a Sunday night for students. And so Nick and I, we came up with this plan where by the 15th, and this was totally like my military training, by the 15th of the month previous, so January 15th, February was all planned out. That way, February 1st to the 15th, I am working on March. I know what I'm teaching on in February. I know if I have a guest speaker in February by January 15th. And so at today's January 20th, I'm already looking ahead to March. February is completely planned out. I know
That's awesome.
What days I'm teaching. I know I have a guest speaker coming in one of the Wednesdays. Not really guest speaker. She's one of my leaders, but she's gonna be speaking for me one Wednesday in February. And so I have that all planned out. So now I'm focusing on March. What series am I going to do in March? I got to plan around spring break, because spring break happens. And so I'm looking through all that. And that's what we did. We're constant. Hey, we were so communicative. It was to, hey, what is going on Instagram this week? It wasn't just like, hey, we should probably come up with a teaching series because it's January 20th and February will be here before we know it. It was what is going as we have a texting software at the church, what texts are going out to the parents, what is going on Instagram, what is going on Facebook. And that's what we did. We were constant communication of, hey, let's plan. You can never be over prepared. You can be extremely under prepared, but you can never be over prepared. And I think that was, we combined the, hey, I have to have plan A through G in motion, to the, it'll buff. And we combined those two personalities, and it just made it super smooth.
That's awesome. And I think, when it comes to, any ministry, but especially student ministry, like consistency is key. You have a small group leader that jumps around every couple of weeks to different small groups. They're never going to have that buy-in than a small group leader that's been there for a year. And the same thing with a pastor. And I think when you have that healthy transition that's happening, and you see that it's a collaboration rather than a competition, for me at least, I would think that it builds a good foundation for these students that are feeling like some of their consistency is going to change, and it gives them a level of confidence with what you guys are doing. So a lot of, from your perspective, what about the outgoing pastor, like what kind of posture did he take that made it feel so peaceful and honoring rather than a competition between you and him?
Oh man, what a great question. I think there was a couple factors that played in. As I said earlier, this was a healthy leaving. This wasn't he fell into sin and was getting fired. This wasn't a, hey dude, you kind of suck. Like, this might not be your calling. See you later. This was, God was leading him somewhere else, and the church was behind him. The elders, the pastors, we were all behind him, where it was just like, hey, we're going to push you away from students, not because we don't like you, but because we see where God's calling you. And so with that coming in, there wasn't, for me, and I think I could speak for Nick, because we still have constant communication. He's actually coming back to students to speak for us in a couple weeks.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was not like, hey, I'm leaving, it's bad, here's Matt, good luck. It was, hey, I'm leaving because this is where God's calling me, but I'm not leaving y'all empty-handed. Here's Matt, and this is what he's going to do. It was almost, and I don't know if I said this pre-recording or during the recording, but it was handing off that baton, right? The Olympics are next year. Everyone's thinking about the Olympics. The baton. Once that racer gets in, the other racer slows down. Once the handoff happens, the first runner slows down, and then the second dude just sprints to finish. And that's kind of what it was. It was, we were running alongside each other, side by side, waiting on that handoff. And as soon as that handoff happened, he started slowing down and said, "Go get him!" Right, cheering me on from behind, and I just took off running.
Man, that's amazing. And I think, I don't know this guy. You said his name is Nick?
Yeah. I
don't know Nick much, but I know youth ministry can always feel like a competition between the people down the road. Not that it should be, but it can be. And I think one, for him, just being able to do that, I think shows a level of his integrity and character, which is, an amazing thing. On your side, I'm sure during this transition, there are certain things as the incoming leader that you were tempted to do quickly. Like, what did you have to intentionally slow yourself down from doing while this transition is happening?
Oh, good question. Because, and that's so hard for my personality, because not only am I a planner, I'm 0 to 100 and there's no in between. I'm either like, I need to sleep for 37 hours or I could stay awake for 37 hours. There's no in between. So there was definitely like, okay, how do I prove myself? How do I prove myself? That was the internal dialogue. And then I called my mentor in ministry. He's a student pastor in Florida where I used to be stationed. And I called him. I was like, hey, it's my first year. What do I do? He goes, just preach. He's like, that's all you got to do. Preach the gospel. And I was like, no, but what else, right? I'm the new guy. Like, he goes, no, dude, just preach the gospel. And I know you can do it because you were my leader here when you were stationed in Florida. Like, I know what you're capable of. Just preach the gospel. And then I was listening, and I can't remember if I read it or if I heard it on a podcast or something. But I can't even give credit to who said it. I believe it was Craig Grove's show, but I could be wrong. Said in your first year of business change, don't make any major changes. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, all right, cool. And then my wife, right, she's there's so many words to describe her. And the one I'm going to use right now is my therapist, right? Because she's the one that, like, she sits me down and she sits me straight and she's like, Matt, and she calls me Matthew. She's like, Matthew, calm down. And so I was like, what if I fail? She's like, this isn't about you. It's about Jesus. And I was just like,
man, that's some wisdom.
I was like, oh, got me there. That hurt. But then, yeah, so I just like, cause I know my personality. I know my character flaws. I'm like, I got to prove myself where I just put it all in God's hands. And I was just like, Colonial Students isn't the Matt Holcomb show. As much as I can fall into that pitfall of making it the Matt Holcomb show, outside of preaching, I'm a gifted public speaker. There's times where like people have to brief high-ranking individuals in the military. They're like, "Hey, Holcomb, you got it," because you have the ability to communicate. So like, I'm a naturally God-given talent is public speaking. So now when you start talking about preaching, it's like, well, you're not just public speaking. You're carrying the message of the gospel. Like, yeah. The keys to eternity almost is like, hey, here's the 2 doors, choose one. And it sometimes makes or breaks on how you say it. And so
absolutely, yeah.
I gave it all to God and said, hey, this isn't my show. This is your show. Just however you want. And I feel like it's gone. I'm still here, right? I haven't been fired yet. But it just took people in my corner that know me to say, hey, we know your character flaws. And it's maybe character flaw isn't the best word there, but we know what you're apt to do, right? We know your personality. We know you can make it a fun game show night. And there's nothing wrong with that. But at the end of the day, what happens when the games are gone?
Yeah.
And my mentor, Jeremiah, he told me, he said, I'm just going to leave you with this. What you win them, how does it go? I say it all the time, and now I'm blinking. What you win them with is what you win them to. He's like, so preach the gospel. And I was like, okay. And that's what we did. We just 2 weeks ago launched a new motto throughout our student ministry. It's know the gospel, live the gospel, share the gospel. And so we're very gospel centered, and that's what we're going to keep going. That's not like an annual theme. That's going to be our theme for my tenure here at the church is know the gospel, live the gospel, share the gospel.
That's awesome. And it sounds like, man, you've got, from this transition, the pastor that you transitioned with, then you have that mentor, your wife. It sounds like you have some really great, stable people that help hold you up and help you keep accountable, which is just an amazing thing. A lot of times, one of the things that I mentioned in the episode is that if a transition's done wrong, our congregation, our students, whoever we're working with, it can almost feel like a really messy divorce.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's, if we're looking at student ministry, which I think the average youth pastor, I don't know how or what's changed with it, but I want to say it's like 18 months or something. So you figure a student going through their whole high school period is going to go through 2, if not 3 youth pastors, according to the statistic. With that, that means 2 or 3 divorces that they almost have to go to. How has your students and your leaders responded to how this transition went into the in essence, change of leadership?
So, oh man, what a good question. And this, I know you try to keep it short, so I'm going to try the entire episode, but I could spend like an hour and a half talking on this because my leaders, I don't want to say my leaders, they're the leadership team, but they are awesome. They were 100% behind me. There was and 2 of the leaders on the team are 2 elders in the church, one being the chairman of the elders. So I was like,
well, that's a really great thing to have in your corner.
I was like, yeah, no pressure, man, but the chairman of the elders and then the second elder are on the leadership team, but they've been so pro. Like, there's never been, hey, we see kind of how you're shifting, because like I said, there's been no major changes. Mm-hmm. There's been some minor tweaks, some things that Nick did that were specific to Nick, right? Mm-hmm. He started every night. We meet Wednesdays from 6 to 8. He started every Wednesday night by yelling at the top of his lungs, "Good morning." And I tried that my very first Wednesday. They're like, "That's Nick's thing." I was like, "Okay, I won't do it again." I'm sorry, guys. But so there's been some like minor tweaks that I was like, "All right, that was Nick's. I'm gonna let that ride into the sunset with Nick." But there's never been like, "Hey, can I talk to you, Matt? Nick used to do it like this, or the guy before Nick used to do it like this. I think you should do it." It's been like, "Hey, what do y'all think of this?" And they're all like, they all shoot me the thumbs up in our pregame huddle, and they're like, "Yeah, sure, do it. If it fails, it fails. If not, cool, keep doing it." So the leaders have just been 100% behind me, and the students are. I have this cool person. Again, we're talking personality traits where I can gravitate toward the jocks. I can talk football, baseball, basketball, hockey all day long. I can gravitate toward the nerds, right? My son's name is Anakin, right? Yeah. If that doesn't say nerd, I don't know what does. Just the one thing I can't do, and I've tried because it's very popular with students right now, is anime. I can't watch anime. There's just something about it. Maybe I'm watching the wrong ones. I just cannot watch the animes. So when they start talking to me about, like, I know one of the real popular ones is One Piece, I think it's called. It's just like, "Hey, did you see that new episode of One Piece?" I was like, "Nope, sorry guys." But I can gravitate toward, like, and I'll go to the sporting events. I'll go to the trumpet concerts. I'll go where they are. I'll meet them where they're at. And so the students, there's been a lot of buy-in from students where it's like, "Yeah, Matt's okay. Matt's pretty cool, you know." I still have the ones that talk trash, but deep down inside, I know they hopefully love me a little bit. Yeah. I don't know, probably not. But and then the parents, it's just talking to the parents, like, hey, making sure they understand why Nick left, because I mean, once a rumor starts, it's game over. So hey, no, Nick's good, right? He's still around. We still love Nick. He just left because God was leading him in a different direction, and just again having that flow of communication to build that trust, instead of just coming in as like, "Hey, I'm Matt Holcomb. This is how we're going to do things from here on out." It's like, no, it's, hey, what? And one thing we did was we started a student-led leadership team. So we have our adult leaders, our small group leaders, but now we have from 7th to 12th grade, we have a group of 8 students where I meet with them at least once a month. I try to do it every other week. There's like, what's going on in your small group? What's going on in student ministry? Where do y'all want to see us 6 months from now? And building that relationship with them where they could take what we talk about in that meeting and go back to their respective small groups and get that buy-in, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And then, like you said, you still have some of those holdouts, but I have a student that very hard to read, but we did a retreat a few months ago, and at the end, he was in my small group, and he's like, wasn't sure what to think of you at first. Kind of thought you were a little weird, but you're cool. And I was like, for him to say that, man, I will take that. That's a recommendation right there. But all right, so kind of we've talked about your transition, and again, such an amazing just story of how to really build a good foundation there. So let's say there's a pastor, maybe there's a youth pastor going to be stepping into a role, maybe there's like a board that's listening to this, let's break it down to two suggestions. One is to the youth pastor that's walking into a transition. The second one is to a church that's looking at starting a transition. What's one thing you tell each to encourage them, maybe to prioritize, or something to do to help them with this transition?
Yeah, great question. Number one, I've said it about 37 times. I don't even know if I'm saying the words right anymore. Have a transition plan, like an actual, this is our plan. What does it look, especially if the outbound and the inbound are going to have overlap.
Yeah.
Have that transition plan in place. Who is in charge of what? Because on the website, if you looked at the website when Nick and I were both on staff, it both said student director. And it was like, I think of this scene from The Office when Oscar is like, yeah, every country does good with 2 presidents, or the church with 2 popes, right? And it's like, all right, who's the student director? And the cool thing about me and Nick was, it was like, yeah, we both are. Like, who cares? But have that transition plan. Who's in charge of what? Because personalities clash. People have different opinions, and that's okay. That's what makes, that's where we go forward with the future, is having those different opinions instead of just having yes men everywhere. Yeah. But have that transition plan in place. And then 2, build the relationship with the outbound, for the inbound guy, build the relationship with the outbound guy, and build relationships before you start doing anything crazy. Mm-hmm. You got to get buy-in before you start doing, it's after my first year, I just changed camps. They've been going to the same camp for what feels like 800 years. And I was like, guys, we're going to switch things up. It's just a trial phase right now. In 2 years, we may end back up in the same camp, but we're going to try something new. And 95% of the students were like, cool, let's try it. We still have some of the students that are like, but we've always gone there. It's like, I'm not saying it's wrong, but just because we've always done something doesn't make it right.
Yeah.
So we're just trying it. That's all we're doing, is we're trying something new this year. We may end up back at our previous camp. It's just, be honest, I wasn't that big of a fan. I also didn't have phone service, and parents are texting me. It's like, how's my student going? If I have 1 bar of service in one little corner of the camp, that's kind of an issue. Yeah. So I was like, we're just going to change things up and give it a trial run. So
then you have that worst case scenario parent that's like, they're all dead.
Yeah. Well, one time during this camp where I was like, yeah, they need to do something for at least youth pastors that have service. We had a no joke tornado right over the middle of the camp.
Oh my goodness.
I'm trying to use our texting software to let parents know we are sheltered in place. We're okay. But nothing's going through because I'm not in my one corner where I get a bar of service. All they know is we're evacuating to a building because of a tornado threat, and now I can't even text. So I'm trying to hack into the Wi-Fi. And I need somebody to send a text to parents to say we're okay. And we eventually got it, but it was crazy. So
if you're listening, camps, you need to make sure there's some way to access data.
Yes, you need to be able to communicate to parents while you have your student in another state. But like I said, that relation currency where I was able to be like, hey, we're switching things up, and a majority of them were like, cool, let's do it. So yeah, have that transition place and then build relationships. Those are the 2 things that are going to carry you much further. Nobody's going to remember the games. Very few are going to remember your sermons. You might have one, hey, that was a really fun game. Oh, that was a really good sermon. I remember you going to my basketball game. Mm-hmm. That's what build those relationships.
Absolutely,
that's how you have that healthy transition.
Awesome. Well, thank you for walking us through this transition, and glad to hear that things are going so well and God's really blessing you and your family and your student ministry. So before we did hey, if you want to, talk about your youth ministry or any links or anything like that, obviously if there's anything you want to promote, absolutely. But being a second-time guest, the first second-time guest, what is something that maybe a viewer could keep you, your youth ministry, or whatever in prayer for as they watch this video?
Yeah, so as of the recording and as of the release, we are getting ready for a weekend retreat. So if y'all could pray for our weekend retreat, we are going through a pretty hard topic of never alone. And, you were talking statistics earlier, and I've read several conflicting numbers, but upwards of 80 to 90% of students at one point in their life have felt some form of aloneness, whether it's emotional, physical, mental, spiritual. some form of aloneness. And we know from the Bible that we are never alone. So it's going to be a hard topic. Just pray for our leaders, pray for our speakers. That is February 6th through the 8th. So I know this is releasing before then. And if you're listening after that, pray for the next year's weekend retreat, because we do them every year.
Yeah.
And then you can follow us at Colonial Church Students on Instagram and Facebook. And then you can follow me on Instagram. I'm the Matthew Holcomb. Not one of a kind, because I've been stationed with another Matthew Holcomb.
Really? Wow.
So, but I have been stationed with another Matthew Holcomb. And so the Matthew Holcomb on Instagram, you can reach out to me there. I am starting to try to put more short form content from my own point of view. If I pull the trigger, eventually I'm going to have a podcast. My wife keeps telling me to pull the podcast. But I'm like, no, I'll just continue being guests other places. Yeah, Colonial Church Students on Instagram, and then the Matthew Holcomb on Instagram for myself. And then please just pray for our students for weekend retreat.
Awesome. And for anyone that's interested, we'll have those links and, the different connections in the show description, or if you're listening in the show, whatever it is, the transcript or whatever. But thank you so much, Matt, for again, joining with us and sharing these different things that you went through your point of view and what God is doing through your youth ministry. Again,
thanks for having me out again, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. This is Josh, and this is Beyond the Numbers. What we do with these interviews is we call it Voices from the Field, where we bring in other pastors from across the U.S. and maybe even the world to share a little bit of insight so that we can grow together. I think the biggest walk away from today is put a plan in place and make sure there's a lot of communication, because yes, it might cost you a little time and a little effort now, but the ramifications and the ripple effects that happen afterward to the students, to the leaders, and to the church will last a lifetime. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you guys next week.